Hey, what's up, guys? Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great. Also, check out the Tobin and Leroy show, weekdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You guys can catch the Tobin and Leroy podcast. You guys can watch us on 1043 WQAM. I put the handle in the description every day. We go live 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So, hope you guys can check that out. Very excited. Heat Media Day is 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away from today, dude. I'm recording this on Monday night. And excited about that. We're going to be broadcasting live there, and a plethora of Heat guests will stop by. They always treat us fantastic, and looking forward to it, man. This is going to be a fun year. Norman Powell joining the Miami Heat, and it was interesting. You know, I want to talk about Norman for a second here because I saw Norman Powell was at or he posted on his Instagram that he was at the Terrence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez fight, which is not surprised. Norman Powell lives in Las Vegas, trains at the UFC Performance Center. I usually want to ask him about that. Does boxing as training, and I think it's an interesting thing that used to be. And I wanted to know if that he started that first or if that was Kyle Lowry, because Kyle Lowry used to work out there in the offseason as well. He works out in Las Vegas. I know Kyle is a big golfer too. I don't know about Norm with all that, but it's interesting because I was really annoyed today by something from Shams Charania, who I'm like a little down on, right? We already had and I say this treading lightly, okay? You know, he's like Heisenberg. You know, I'm going to tread lightly on this because I know Shams can be very accurate, okay? Shams is really, really a good reporter. And when that whole Jimmy Butler thing was happening and we were watching it all basically play out in front of us like WWE, the dude stuck to his guns. He kept saying what it was, and he knew. He had the aces up his sleeve with that whole thing, and we fell for the dog and pony show with Bernie Lee and whatnot. Happy belated, by the way, to Jimmy Butler. But Shams also is, he lied to us this offseason, right? And I got annoyed with it because he said that this was going to be, his words, the most craziest offseason ever. And nothing has happened that would ever define that as this. You would have to put this in the category of LeBron James leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers to come to the Miami Heat. Kevin Durant deciding to come to the Golden State Warriors. You would have to put this in some pretty big. Jimmy Butler going to the Heat with Kawhi and Paul George getting traded to the LA Clippers, which has certainly become an interesting story in its own right, but not one of the craziest offseason as far as moves were concerned. And, it got reiterated today because, which this kind of has a Heat tie, and I'll get to the Heat thought in a second, but he did this whole story, and it was like the inside of Jonathan Kuminga and his relationship with the Warriors. And I have to tell you, dude, got to be honest with you, I don't know how good Jonathan Kuminga is going to be. I'm not here to limit on who Jonathan Kuminga is going to be. We all kicked the tires on the Jonathan Kuminga thing when it was basically thrown out in the media the entire summer that Jonathan Kuminga's, the favored landing spot for Jonathan Kuminga was the Miami Heat, which was very clearly something put out by Kuminga's camp because he looked at the Heat, no Jimmy Butler, seems like a natural fit, but it didn't make any, like it never was a thing. It was like, why does this keep happening? It doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. The Heat are in this spot where they're trying to figure out what they are. They're going to go give Jonathan Kuminga $30 million a year. And so, but this Jonathan Kuminga thing has been basically the big story, of the tail end of summer because there's been nothing else. Nothing has happened this summer that was crazy. Kevin Durant got traded. We all knew that was going to happen, and the Heat were in that. And he ended up going to the Houston Rockets. But we all knew Kevin Durant was going to get traded. So I can't put that under the category of most craziest. We all knew it was crazy at the All-Star break when Luka got traded. or when Luka got traded and then Kevin Durant was maybe going to get traded in the Jimmy Butler trade. That was crazy. But it wasn't crazy because we all knew by the end of this thing he was done with the Phoenix Suns. And we also knew that Bradley, so we like the Suns finally tapping out on their core of Durant, Beal, Booker, not crazy. And I just wondered, is Shams, was he just making stuff up, or did he really think that Giannis, because if Giannis would have left, for sure. If LeBron would have left the Lakers, for sure. Those go under the category of like if both those things happen. And it kind of felt like he was hinting at that. The Giannis one was the big one. And I don't know if he knows something. Like, I'm curious because Shams does know things. I'm curious if he knows Giannis wants to leave, but the Bucks aren't ready to tap out on that. And that was just the ace up his sleeve the whole time, because there were like looks of like, kind of had like little looks, like sly looks from Shams. But whatever, dude, whether he knew something about Giannis's feelings or somebody in Giannis's camp, he's still a Buck and he's not going anywhere. They signed Thanasis. He kept like looming out here that something was going to happen with him, and nothing happened. And so now I'm stuck here with Kuminga stories. And I'm sick of Kuminga. Nothing has happened new with the Kuminga thing either. Joe Lacob flew to Miami and they said, "Do you want me? Do you want to be here? Do you want me?" It's like, he's Jonathan Kuminga. Why are we getting full behind the scenes on this? He's not this kind of a player. What are we doing? Would you get any kind of a breakdown of this with Tyler Hero? I don't think so. So I don't know if it's just Warrior stuff or what, but I was like, why? So I was annoyed by it. And then I was thinking to myself, did the Heat make the second biggest move of the offseason? Because I was like looking through the moves, right? And if I miss one, light me up in the comments, okay? But, okay, KD to the Rockets is undeniably the biggest move of the summer, right? Like that was, they were a good team, high in the West, they had Kevin Durant. But I was like looking at this, and there's only 3 top 25 scorers that change teams, okay? And to give you guys the sense of who they are, you have Kevin Durant, who changed hands, and he went to the Houston Rockets. Okay, big move. No one's denying it. You keep scrolling, you are looking around, and you get to number 10. Damian Lillard, no longer on the Milwaukee Bucks. Now that I would actually argue that was probably the most shocking move of the offseason. But however, and he's back on the Trailblazers, which is not a game. It's not a move of but it's not a move of consequence, because Damian Lillard wasn't going to play this year regardless. So I can't give him that one. So if you were to take Damian Lillard away, you then get down all the way to the next player in the top 25 scorers last year. And do you know who the only other top 25 scorer in the league last year was that will be on a different team this year? You guessed it, Heat fans. Norman Powell. Norman Powell is the only other guy in top 25 scoring last year with 21.8 points per game last year. He's the only other guy who switched teams in the most craziest offseason ever, according to Shams Charania. Which leads me to I'm like, wait, did the Heat make the second most impactful move? Because we always get on them for not making moves. And I'm like looking at this, and nobody's really, everybody kind of just throws in, yeah, the Heat got Norman Powell. It's kind of a nice move. I was like, wait, no, I think did the Heat actually make the second biggest impact move? Now, some people can like other rosters better. Like, I think you could probably look at like the Hawks adding Porzingis, or I guess you got to go with the Magic adding Desmond Bane with all they gave up for him, and be like, those are going to be more complete rosters than the Heat, or rosters you like better than the Heat. But are those guys better players than Norman Powell was last year? I would say no. Maybe you say Desmond Bane's been better over his career slightly, but not by much. And so it's interesting that we have a situation here where Shams said this was going to be the craziest offseason ever. We always are saying the Heat don't do anything, but I kind of think the Heat did the second biggest move all offseason. I mean, there's other things you could go like, oh, extensions that were signed, like, Luka signing an extension with the Lakers, the Nuggets getting off of Michael Porter Jr. and bringing in Cam Johnson, Duncan Robinson going to the Pistons. Like, you could say there's other complementary moves that will make good teams stronger, but I'm talking about like seismic moves. I'm just double checking this again. Like, yeah. Nobody else in the top 25 moved. Everybody else is on the same team. Everybody else on the same team except for Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, who's not going to play this year, and Norman Powell. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing. And Shams, and even I can say as a Heat fan, it's like, yeah, the Norman Powell thing was a nice move, but it's not like, there's not going to be first take debates for days over it. There's barely podcast episodes about it in the national landscape of stuff. You had friggin' Tim Legler be like, I'm bored with the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat are sitting here like, hey, we made the second biggest move. We signed a very close to being all-star. We traded for an all-star guard basically for nothing, or close to be all-star guard for peanuts. But it's crazy, man. And Shams, like, there's another thing that annoyed. Like, there's been so little action. Shams is out here, like, actively, like, clearing guys of investigations. Not Terry Rozier, but he did do that once, and that didn't turn out to be true. But clearing guys of investigations to put them back in the free agent market, because there's been so little action. He's like, I got to get a Malik Beasley market out here because I need something. There's been nothing. I mean, it's the biggest story, this stupid Kawhi thing, which isn't stupid. I mean, it's important, right? And I talked about this when it happened, and look, that's a fantastic job of reporting by Pablo Torre. But I have thought about, like, do people, like, really, like, it's been kind of like every NBA podcast is now, like, sucking at the teat of this story, because, like, there's so little going on until the next 2 weeks when media days start. We had Europe. I mean, listen, how many Eurobasket recaps did I do? I'm guilty of it too. But, in the end, this move happened. And I said this at the time, and I still stand by it. The reason this is a funny story, and I think people care about it, is fans like when rich people look stupid. We like that. It's just funny. It's funny because these guys get around. Rich people run the world. They get around on all these loopholes in life. They always got a leg up on the little guy. But you want to know what's great about, you want to know what the humbling thing about is for rich people? Sports. Because Stephen Ross is very wealthy, and that guy doesn't have a playoff win in 25 years. And he could add all the trinkets he wants to Hard Rock Stadium. He could put a canopy on it. He could buy a grass farm. He can bring F1, Super Bowls, tennis, whatever. Still hasn't gotten him a playoff win. Build a new practice facility, build a hospital next to that playoff facility, get all the rave reviews. No player likes being anywhere more or gets treated classier than they do on the Miami Dolphins. He is super rich. Doesn't matter. Did you see what his face looked like in the booth when the Dolphins lost? He looked miserable. And Steve Ballmer, who's richer than all the owners, many of them put together, gets seemingly caught in this ridiculous paying Kawhi under the table. Where as a fan, whether it's college sports, whether it's our team, we really don't mind if our teams tamper. I'm all for my team tampering as long as they don't get caught. If you told me today that the Miami Heat Big Three was put together with deals all over the place, hell, I would be thrilled as long as they didn't get caught. Just don't get caught. Stephen Ross also, by the way, got caught tampering, and actually lost a first-round pick over it. So when we see rich people be so desperate to get a leg up and they get busted, that's just funny to sports fans. And that's really where I come out. I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, they had Kawhi Leonard literally, like, just getting paid under the table for nothing. And then the biggest part of it that's maybe the most cruel about it is that they watched SGA get traded to OKC and rise like a phoenix to the top of the league as the most valuable player and a champion. And they're sitting here paying Kawhi to plant fake trees. And Paul George isn't even there anymore, which makes it even more like that makes it the most hilarious about this is they're sitting here. We're backtracking. Kawhi is basically at the end of the peak of his powers. And he's not going to say anything about this. And Steve Ballmer is just doing damage control all over the place. And the NBA media keeps embarrassing itself, much like saying it's the most craziest NBA offseason of all time, because they're all like, well, is this a thing? Is this not a thing? You have Mark Cuban, who's like playing defense like he's a prime Darrell Revis all over Pablo Torre. And I'm just like, why is he going to bat so hard for this? This is crazy. Like, who cares? You know, we're sitting here. You don't think Mark Cuban was doing things when he was giving Dirk Nowitzki the minimum? Come on. You know, I just, it's silly to me that this is, but this has become, this has been such a boring NBA offseason and why I need Miami Heat season to get here so fast. I miss it so much. I cannot wait to see this basketball team play. Flaws, whatever they may be, I don't care. I love them, and I need Miami Heat basketball back, okay? While Heat Coyote is ready to get hurt again. Meep. I really am. I am ready to run right into the rock tunnel and be flat as a pancake because I miss it so much. I am so sick of Jonathan Kuminga stories. I am so sick of the Kawhi Leonard story. I just need the Miami Heat, who it appears in the most craziest offseason ever, made the second biggest move. I need this team to be back so hard. I miss them so much. And please, can basketball season just get here already?